I'll let Dr. Tom do his full introduction, but I do want to make sure if you haven't signed the petition, to please do it before you leave. We have additional information on his website, of course, if you want to donate. We do have envelopes. If you want to do it through his website, it's vote.bob.com. But if we could please get everyone seated so that we can begin. Again, thank you so much for coming out today. I appreciate it. Dr. Bob.
Thank you. Thanks everybody coming out. The whole purpose of the town hall is to listen, right? Is for me to learn from you. So since a lot of people don't know who I am, we're going to start off maybe with 20 minutes about stuff about myself, and then we'll go into policies, important areas that I think is important, not just to me, but for the members of the First District and to us as Americans. And then most of the time will be for questions and answers. We've done probably several town halls already. I think my opponent has done one in 6 years. So we're doing 7. We're going to 7 different counties. Again, we've invited anybody that wishes to come. The representative means representing everybody in the district. The young and the old, the Democrats and the Republicans and the independents. That's what you're supposed to end up being. So let's start off. I think it's vital to know the person you're going to vote for. So my first part is, who is Dr. Bob, right? You need to know the person. You need to know how they stand, how they make decisions, what they think is important. Because you won't know, I won't know what comes in front of us, the future, right? If you knew who I am, you'll have a very good idea. I would have addressed COVID. No, I am addressing COVID, public health medical director, so you disagree with me on that too. But you will have a good idea of where I come from. So I want to start off is I base almost everything I do in life on principles. Right, and I had to think about this for a period of time. I guess it's coming from reading, but almost everything I end up doing is going to be based on principles. So some of the principles I thought about is wisdom, courage, right? You got to have wisdom and courage, are just 2 parts of that. I'd like to see more politicians actually have the courage to say what they truly believe, what they truly think is good for America, not just, I can't say that because I won't get voted in. I have the courage to say so, right? And maybe the wisdom is to do what's right? You got to have the courage. You got to have wisdom. You got to have kindness. I believe in democratic freedom. Yeah. I believe in equality under the law. Those are some of my fundamentals that guide almost all my decision making. So who am I? I come from Minnesota, close to Michigan. But I come from Minnesota. Me and my opponent were both from Minnesota. You know that? Oh, yeah. He went to a Lutheran school, and I went to a Catholic school, and we played against each other. I didn't play against Jack, but we both come from Minnesota. It was a rural small town of about 10,000 people. Came from a large family. I had six brothers and sisters. 2 parents divorced, right? My parents were probably working middle class at a time, though both of them had to work, and we were on the equivalent of government assistance still to even make it work at that time. So my family did well. We did well because we were a family. Even with the divorce, even with family alcoholism that everybody suffers from, right? We were still surrounded by grandparents that loved you, that taught me things, right? My grandmother, there's my kindness. Maybe part of my justice might have come from my grandfather, but I learned a lot of stuff when I was growing up. I eventually wanted to become a doctor, so I had a grand plan to become a good doctor. You have to know people. That's why I did a master's in social work, got to know people. I figured that medical care only provides about 10% of your health. Of all the indices of your health, medical care is 10%. So if I want to be a doctor, if I want to be a healer, I got to know what makes you healthy. So I got a master's in public health. Then I taught at the University of Minnesota for a while, went to medical school, graduated, did my residency in family medicine, started a couple of my first job was in the VA hospital as a social worker with the older vets. Worked with troubled adolescents in a committed, at that time, state hospital. Anybody remember what a state hospital is? So I worked in an adolescent ward with a very troubled youth. Went on then to serve with the Navajo Nation as a physician. Got invited to their community, spent 3 years serving with the Indian Health Services with the Navajos, and thoroughly enjoyed such. Then I moved to Michigan in 1989, where I'm still a resident of Marquette, Michigan. So I've been a family physician in Marquette since 1989. We live in Marquette. I served over 2.5 decades as a family physician, going around different various jobs that other physicians did not want to do. So guess what? I started a special needs clinic for children. Why? Because we didn't have anything in the UP, so I started a special needs clinic for children. Special children, ADD, oppositional defiant disorder, depression, anxiety. Why? Did I have the skill set at that time? No, because there was a need. And thoroughly enjoyed it to the point that later on, the psychiatrist was referring me, those people, and I gave them the paranoid schizophrenics that it's like they had to be hospitalized. So most of my career in family medicine has gone from the full family medicine, going wherever the need may be, right? I've done administrative work. I was the director of the Medicare plan, Medicaid plan, pharmacy plan. So I did my administrative stuff. The last 10 years before I left Marquette as a job, I was a hospitalist. Why? No one wanted to be out in the middle of the night taking care of hospital people. So I went to a hospitalist, to an intensivist, and still did my family practice clinic, balancing both of them out. Then about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I got another call in to go in the Foreign Service. The Foreign Service is the Department of State. The Foreign Service, that's the branch of the diplomats that spend their career overseas. So I signed up, did the application, which is another whole story, interesting, but we'll skip that part. Then my wife and myself, we moved overseas. Our first assignment was in Pakistan during Osama bin Laden. So I was my role there is a diplomat, but my role is called the regional medical officer. The regional medical officer is in control of all medical or health things in the country as belongs to me as a diplomat. So I provided the medical care to the diplomat, but I also was the ambassador's counselor in terms of anything medical or health-wise that's happening in Pakistan at that time. So if you can remember during the hunt for Osama bin Laden, you remember the polio, issues where the workers were going out. So the ambassador brings me in and said, what do you think about this, before we even knew what was going on with our fellow agency, called the CIA. So it was a very interesting period of time. We spent our tours, we do tours just like the military does. We did finished our tour in Pakistan, then we went over to Korea, which I covered Mongolia, part of China, Eastern Russia, because they have a lot of time zones in Russia, right? So I covered Eastern Russia and some of the islands. Then we went to Afghanistan. So when you end up hearing Afghanistan, stories, lived there, Peggy and myself lived there. The people that got evacuated are our friends. Just called 2 of them yesterday. Did your family get out? How are they doing? A lot of them was quite a success. I know people talk about getting out of Afghanistan, but the airport, that was our airport, the pictures on the news, I can tell you the roads. So we spent a tour in Afghanistan. Then went on to, where did I go next? Morocco, covered North Africa, covered 7 countries in Africa. Ended up my last tour of 2 years in Iraq. So a very interesting period of time. As I tell people, we have ranks there too. My rank in the Foreign Service would be equivalent to general. So, there's other generals out there somewhere, there's stripes, and some of us are diplomats. So I look at my career, I look at where I grew up, what I did, how I did it. Luck. There's a lot of luck goes with this. But if I could say, the government helped out, right? I didn't tell you how I went to college and how I was able to afford that. I didn't tell you how I went to medical school with the Indian Health Service paying my bill, right, in exchange for service. So if it wasn't for the government assistance, I don't think I would be where I am right now, right? I don't think I would have served the community for 25 years as a physician, a diplomat for 10 years, or currently a public health medical director for the last 2 years, directing one of the large, directing our response for the largest pandemic that we have seen in over 100 years. So my goal as running for Congress is to give you the same, to give our district the same the opportunities that I had, right? Everyone deserves opportunities for the government to end up helping. That's what the government should do. And we'll talk a little bit more how that can be done. So knowing that I'm a public health medical director, you may question my wisdom on that one, but it is a needed issue, right? I think we have done a fantastic job with all the bumps in the roads, and we get them every single day. So I want to start off by talking about COVID, right? So I'm going to switch this around a little bit. And I'm going to read parts of this because I think it's important. I said, what should I tell people about COVID, the government response? What did COVID teach us? That's how I wanted to start this off. COVID taught us we cannot predict everything, but the leader needs to be able to listen, to learn, and to be dedicated to being the most informed about issues to ultimately make tough decisions. I think, very, very important. Leaders make tough decisions that might not always be the most popular, but they ought to be the most informed. We need to rise to challenges that are in front of us with humility, but with an urgency and a willingness to move forward together. Science is happening in real time, but that is true of many issues our country faces. We must be willing to learn, to adapt, and to overcome. If we don't trust our leaders and experts, it won't work. If we don't challenge our leaders and experts, we won't be helping, right? So I think I look at a lot of the stuff that we ended up doing to about COVID taught me a lot. It should educate yourselves the good parts about COVID. I think what happens with COVID, science, the law, our principles will guide us forward. Right? If you follow the science, which are facts, and unfortunately the facts are developing in real time. But if we follow the science, we follow our laws, and we follow our principles, we will get through this. I think COVID has created there's a public trust issue. As medical directors have felt it a lot. Even though we try to do the right things with the information we have at the time, right? I think we've lost, some certain populations. I think that's been a communication issue more than anything else. So I want to tell you, where do I think COVID is going to go forward now? I don't want to go over our mistakes, our bumps. I can tell you that too, right? I can tell you that I disagreed with our governor. The governor disagreed with me, right? I can tell you that some of the stuff I disagreed with actually turned into what I thought had worked out better. So sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but you're trying to do the best you can with the facts you have. And you be kind and you be civil about it. And that's what I think we have done. What is our current goals for COVID right now? I think the state has finally come up with 3 goals. And I gotta admit, I had something to do with this one. First, the state wanted just to have cases go way down. It's not the important issue. What's the important issue about COVID is preventing serious illnesses and death. Everybody agree with that? Serious illnesses and death. And the second one is to prevent the collapse of our healthcare system. And the third one is to maintain our way of life and our vital infrastructure. Period. So everything I'm doing about COVID right now is related to those 3 issues. Those 3 issues. And I've been following them for a while. So here we go. How do you prevent death and severe illness? Vaccines, period, vaccines. Masking, I know everybody's wearing the mask, but let me tell you this, right now, there's a problem with facts. The people that are triply vaccinated, don't please raise your hand, but I'm guessing a lot of people in this room would say, I'm triply vaccinated, we call that up to date CDC, right? You are the ones that are wearing the mask. And the other people that are not vaccinated are not. The people that are protecting themselves even more. And the people that are not protected are not. There's a disconnect over here. I've done my risk score, and I can share it, and I will share it with you right now. 19andMe COVID, just look it up once. You can plug in your county, which actually goes to your current COVID risk. You can plug in your activities, if you've been vaccinated, if you've been infected, what medical problems you have, what race and what sex, is all based in science. It will tell you what your risk is of getting COVID, per week. It will tell you the risk of being hospitalized and the risk of dying. My risk of, of normal activities for probably the next 1 year is equivalent of being 3 months older than I currently am. Right, 3 months. So in reality, I understand that we got to put things, together. Preventing the collapse of our healthcare system is to get vaccinated again, right? Pretty simple. And the vital infrastructure is problematic. Because now we're quarantining people, remember the CDC went from 14, remember this 14 days? 10 days, 7 days, 5 days. It's based on the science. It's based on the science to get our infrastructure back up. And if you're vaccinated, appropriately masked, if you need to be masked, where you need to be masked, we can keep our kids in school. We could open up our businesses. We could interact together. We could socialize. So I think the goals of COVID have switched. I'm very proud of our state went forward with that. They're one of the first states that actually said, here's our goals and our policies will be based on that. And I think I had something to do with that. So let's see, I want to pivot over to democracy. How close are we to losing our democracy? And that's another reason, probably the main reason I'm running for Congress. Yeah, I tell people about the national surveys. I don't like surveys all the time, but surveys are starting to say 1 out of 3 Americans believe violence is okay against the government. 1 out of 3. 40% of active political members think the other party is evil. 60% of the people are saying the other party is the threat to America. Something's wrong here. Something's really wrong when we have become the enemies of ourselves, right? So when you listen to people, even in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, about generals, retired generals, you read that 135 generals will end up saying they're worried about a coup, and they're worried about the coup that the military may participate in that. I find that extremely dangerous. So as I said, what happened? We all as Americans, what do we want? We want better jobs, a more robust community, a better life for our families. What happened to us? I believe moderation has gone away. I believe that the extremes have taken control over something like this. We should never be talking about this sort of stuff. So I think it's time, stop it. Just plain outright stop it. Let's work together, not separately. Let's agree on the goals of Americans. Now, I guess I'm tired of people end up saying this party believes this party believes that. What is your goal and how are you going to get there? Debate the facts, come up with possible solutions and move forward, right? I think the best way to do that is together. For all of us to move together. I think when you elect a senator and a representative, you want somebody that you could work together moving forward to the goals of our community. And that's what I would like to end up doing. I believe it's time to stop the angry opposition. Both sides are doing this. I think if there's a third party, they would do the same thing. They're attacking each other. Quit the angriness. That has to stop. We need to replace it with calm, goal-directed collaboration, cooperation, right? And compromise. We either go forward together, or I don't think we're going to go forward. We'll go sideways, we'll go backwards, but we won't go forward. January 6th bothers me. It bothers me a tremendous amount. It wasn't people just out for tourism. Trump stated today, right, that he runs in 2024, he's gonna give pardons to everybody that is convicted. There's something wrong about this, right? Be it wherever, if you break the law, it's the law. We need to respect our law. If we don't do that, we're problems. When I get back, my competition will say it's freedom, it's freedom, it's freedom. Our republic was based on two things, right? The Republic of the United States was based on two things. Liberty, I got that one. Everybody touts, especially, as a Northern Michigan, your PR liberty. But they forget the second most important, the second thing, which is probably more important than the liberty, is civil virtue. Civil virtue basically means the dedication of citizens to the common welfare of each other, even when it doesn't benefit you, right? Civil virtue, we gotta learn how to live together peacefully and move forward. Civil virtue, basically, again, is the common welfare, not your complete freedom, common welfare. Civil virtue for me would be paying taxes and not using the baseball field, right? Hey, why am I paying for the baseball field? Why am I paying for the senior citizen center? Because I live in a community that's good for the community. That is, civil virtue. So what are the important parts of that? Civil discussions. We lost that again. We need to sit down and debate and chat and talk about that.
You'll need the table more than I will.
Trying to reach an agreement by, again, I think collaboration, cooperation, and compromise. Keeping, another very, very important one, keeping informed. The voter has to be informed of who you're voting for. If you are not informed, right, you are not participating in this civil virtue. You gotta know the facts, right? Once you know the facts, then you can end up debating them. But then we also have to have civilized behavior. Somehow that disappeared too, or parts of this. And the last one of civil virtue, the 5 components, is work. Can't give everything for free. Nothing is for free. When I talk about healthcare, it's not free. It's very, very expensive. Education is very expensive. The roads are expensive. So we all have to work for the good of our community. Nothing is for free. So when the Republicans attack me, said he's giving that to you for free. The government's going to control it. Oh no, the government's not doing this. We have worked hard. We should work hard to pay for healthcare for everybody. That's a civil virtue. Healthcare is a civil virtue for me. Education, the roads, commerce, trade, international trade. All of that stuff doesn't benefit each one of us individually, but as a community, it will. So I said, we need to work hard to maintain our freedom, right? Democracy is not a gift. It needs to be nurtured. It needs to, you have to grow it. And somehow we also forgot that. So we need to move forward mutually together to get things done. So one of the virtues I talked about is healthcare. All right, where do I stand in healthcare? Universal health coverage, there's no question about it. How you get that, how you design, that's the fundamental, that's details. How it should be paid for, yeah, it needs to be paid for too, it's expensive. I have a hard time when I watch struggling families throughout the northern Michigan and the UP, and it's anywhere you go. No one should become bankrupt because you had a heart attack or you had cancer. You shouldn't be able to come up with a bill that's unbelievable. 2 years ago, I think as soon as I came back from Iraq, I got sick. Well, my sickness turned into a complicated gallbladder issue. I got flown by jet, my own private jet down to Ann Arbor, because my hospital, 300 beds couldn't take care of it because it was a little more difficult. My bill was $200,000. Now, I had great insurance, but I still had to pay $10,000. Who has $10,000? I mean, I'm privileged. I am privileged. That still was a dent for me. I would end up saying 80% of the people in this district could do that. We need universal coverage. We need accessible, high We need to, they need to receive the services when they need it and where they need it. We need skilled health workers. We need strong people-centered medical care. We need it to be rooted in our communities. It needs to be the full spectrum, including behavioral issues, mental health issues, dental and eye, right? That was an expansion. Some people try to get through Medicare. We need to protect our people from financial consequences of, unfunded medical care. Yep, should the government run it? Did I say that? I didn't say the government should run it. I love Cleveland clinics. I love Mayo clinics. Their centers are excellent. I think the VA does a fantastic job with our vets because they have special needs. They have special needs that a lot of the other medical people are unaware of or don't have the expertise for that. So I'm for privately operated employee insurance, but I believe everybody should have insurance and coverage. Then the medical people have to fix the other problem. It's expensive. We got to look at different ways of making sure medical care, even though it's paid for, remains, within range. The two areas that are becoming out of range right now, education, right, and medical care. And there might be something into that, because both are supported by the government. We raise things up, government pays more. Somehow we have to look at the cost of medical care and education. But I believe education and healthcare need to be a civil virtue and universal for all of us. Important issues, I think, also for the world is the environment. And I do like being in the northern Michigan, the UP, because we have our Native American colleagues. And I like to quote them by saying, we should make our decisions on the environment to have a sustainable world for 7 generations in the future, right? For our generation and 7 more generations. That was their practice for millenniums. I think we need to gather that. So we do need to protect the environment. What do I support? 100% clean energy economy, right? Reaching the net zero, probably. Some people think that it could be done by 2050. I sure hope so. I think renewable carbon-free sources of energy. Carbon tax makes a lot of sense. Right, the carbon tax makes sense. Making America the world's leader in terms of clean energy research, investment, commercialization, manufacturing and export, reducing greenhouse gas emissions from any source, right? Household, factories, agriculture, and transportation, and international. Like I end up saying, the United States pollutes the world. About 15% of the world's pollution comes from the United States. We need international agreements to make this happen. Unfortunately, sometimes here in northern Michigan, people can't think about the economy because they're worried about what's going to be for dinner tonight, right? And they send my kids to college or vocational school. Do we have the monies for this? So the environment needs to be, the government needs to be the leader on things that we can't afford all by ourselves. When we talk about education, I'm all in favor of innovative higher education, is to look at how, when, and where we learn. Education is becoming almost unaffordable too. I actually graduated from college, went back to community college to get my pre-medical stuff. I'm a philosophy major and a German and social work major. Started off in medicine, figured that's not for me. All they do is study all the time. So then I had to go back to junior college afterward. Junior college is a great place to start. Vocational training is a great place. Apprenticeships are wonderful. So we need to look at how can you learn without such a high cost. So what is the purpose? If I end up saying, what is the purpose of higher education? What is the purpose of even going to grade school? One, I think we really have to look at it is 2 major factors. Is to learn how to become a citizen, right? A citizen, how to live together. That's why schools do that. A big part of going to elementary school together is Johnny to play with Mary and to work out their battles. Better to work out their battles then than maybe as an adult with a lot of power under your hands. And the second one is to gain the knowledge to become a productive worker. but I keep on going back to work, a productive worker of whatever sort. And what I mean by a productive worker, an artist, right? An artist, a musician is a productive worker. I provide medicine for folks, but I provide medicine that you could go to this place, a comedy club, and enjoy yourself. You know, we have jobs to live and to enjoy. So yes, a productive worker for me is any tradesperson, is any entertainment person, politicians, they're all productive workers. So can we do this differently? So a person from was going to school, I think in Central Michigan University said, how can it become cheaper for me? So I said, okay, well, let's try this then. I said, it's unsustainable. So how do you end up doing it? So I kind of took some time. Ever hear middle college or early college? Is where you're in high school and you're taking college credits. There are people that are able to go to high school, right? High school is about $10,000 that we're paying in taxpayer money every year for each student. But they're able, before they graduate from high school, to get maybe a year of college credit. Well, that saved you 1/4 of your bill already. How if your school allowed you to take some online classes for a much cheaper price? Well, you can save a lot more there. How about if you did an internship during the summer and got paid for it, learning a skill that's important and you got credit for it? I think we could reduce, when it came down with all of this stuff, I think we said you could reduce, if you have a calculator, we could reduce your bill probably by 1/2 to 2/3. So I think there's ways to think about it differently. So then again, remember, why do we say we go to school for? To learn, to become a worker, to get a good job. So what's a good job? That's what I want to support everybody in the first district. What's a good job? So did some research on this, and here's what are the components? 5 components of a good job. Okay, I'll give you the first one: a livable wage. A good job has to have a livable wage. Your wage may be different, but it has to be your livable wage. But that is not the only one. There's a lot of people that quit jobs that have a great wage. So it must not be a good job because they quit it and they went on to another job. So to be treated fairly. So when I look at the 5 components, and I'll say them all: livable wage, to be treated fairly, to have a promising future, feeling psychologically safe, and a sense of purpose. You can look at any job you wish. Those are the 5 ingredients that you need to have a job. So the governor of the state address, right? She said, we are short of mental health workers. We will make that occur by loan forgiveness. All right, I hope she's right. I hope she's right. I have my doubts. Because is the worker, look at a mental health worker, social worker, psychologist, school counselor, right? Guidance counselor, a woman's counselor. Why are they on the job board? Would everybody agree with me they have a sense of purpose? You don't have to give them purpose. The job has purpose. Being a doctor has purpose. So for the musician again, if they make people smile and relax and enjoy, they got their sense of purpose. What has happened with the school counselors? Why is there an exodus of medical professionals right now? Didn't change our purpose. Wage? I don't think so. Overwork? Yeah. We're used to that. Yeah. Psychologically safe. The medical people, public health people are not feeling psychologically safe right now. They're exiting. Right? So just think about this for yourself and your family. What makes a good job? Those are the components. And if we're short healthcare workers right now, it's not to give them more money. It's actually maybe right now for physicians, is probably to be treated fairly and it's psychologically safe. For a nurse, it might be a promising future, right? Because it might be paid for the nurses. It's different for each category. So I look, we need good jobs in the UP in Northern Michigan. And good jobs are those. Now, musicians, and I think tradespeople, musicians, I think I bring them up a lot, they're probably underpaid. For the benefit they bring to our community, they are probably not underpaid. The plumbers, you know, I paid my plumber bill, you know, $2,000 for like 5 zone valves. It took them 1 hour. And, you know, it was $100 of zone valves. I think they're doing all right. How about, again, remember, I'm running for Congress, so let's talk about taxes. And the governor said, we'll give you money back. Well, as a federal person, you're not giving money back to the state. I'm not a state person, I'd be a federal person. So what do I think about the Tax Cut and Jobs Act from 2017? An unfunded $1.9 trillion bill that most of it, 90% of it went to the wealthy. I have trouble with that. I have trouble when my opponent voted for that. And the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, basically said recently, right, it's still 1.9 trillion unfunded, right? It's still unfunded. It was unfunded then, it was unfunded last year, and it's still unfunded. And most of the benefits did not come to us, and your tax cuts, most people in this room will stop in 2025. He voted against that, he voted for that, but then he votes against the child tax credit, childcare, infrastructure, Build Back Better, education. There's something wrong with that. When we talk, we can debate about the Build Back Better plan, infrastructure. Let me just give you an idea, you know, again, there's 2,700 pages. The Build Back Better, 1.7 trillion, the last one. Out of 1.7 trillion, 95% of it was funded by additional taxes on people, corporate taxes, or taxes on an individual making over $400,000. I thought that was high, 400,000, right? And it was underfunded by $16 billion a month, a year, 16 billion, so 160 billion was unfunded over 10 years. And he voted against it because it was unfunded. There's a disconnect. You gotta have the courage to tell the truth, right? And I don't think my opponent was doing that. So do I support something with infrastructure? Yes. Do I support better, Build Back Better? It depends. But do I support the child tax credit? Yes, I do. If you don't give me child tax credit, you know, which actually was created by the Republicans in 1997. The child tax credit was created by Republicans in 1997 to support the American family. It was raised, the last big, it was raised and modified like 6 different times. Half the time by Democrats, half the time by Republicans. Trump was the last one to raise it in 2017. You know, from whatever, I think, from a certain amount to 2,000, he doubled it. So the child tax credit is to address American families, and it pulled childhood poverty up by 50%. So if you don't like that, I can understand that. Let's go back to the problem. Child poverty. If you don't like the child tax credit, tell me how you're going to address it. And if you said it's not for me, my kids are doing well, my family's doing well. What happened to our civic virtue? We live together, right? We'll pull each other down. So yes, I support things like the child tax credit. If there's other alternatives, I'm all in for it. Women's right to choose. It seems like I shouldn't even bring that up, but I have the courage to do so. It's a privacy issue, folks. I may not like it, you may not like it, or you may like it. It's a woman's right to choose. It's a medical issue. It's a privacy issue, and I think they have the right to do such. It involves individual healthcare rights, privacy rights, freedom of religious expression. Just because your religion says one thing, please don't impose that on somebody else, because that is what women's right to choose is. I don't think anybody is pro-abortion, right? No one is. You can bring up certain issues with it. I got it. No, there's a reproductive kind of ballot that's going on, a mission that's going to be starting. I think the state does have some input, the state and the federal government. No, probably after viability, if you want to call it viability, 22 weeks or whatever, there should be restrictions. No, I am not one of the people who said, no, that 36 weeks, absolutely not, absolutely not. But the women's right to choose should be protected. Roe versus Wade should not be, it's a fundamental right to privacy, and I don't think it should be overdone. The people, I also am very pro-life, very pro-life. When that baby is born, give that child a chance to make it. Give that, there needs to be childcare for that child, foster, adoption care, right? There needs to be healthcare, there needs to be education. Please just don't be pro-life before you're born. Be pro-life after you're born and show your support. So I tell people I'm both. I'm pro-choice and I'm pro-life. And I don't think that is, weaseling around anything. So since we're on hard issues, let's talk about guns, right? The Second Amendment. I want to rephrase it, make it very, very simple. I'm against gun violence. Let's rephrase it. Don't talk to me about gun control. Let's talk about gun violence. The last major year, we went up again. Last year was another record year for gun violence. About 20,000 people die of violence one way or the other, and 25,000 die by suicide, most of it by gun violence. This country has recognized gun violence as a public health epidemic. We need to study it. We need to look at what the problem is, gun violence. We need to look at the facts. We need to look at reasonable solutions that are acceptable and move forward. So when I get asked, what do you think about gun control? Gun violence is the issue, period. Affordable housing, problematic, right? I've been here, I came here yesterday, of course, running for Congress. I don't even say I'm running for Congress. I just listen to people. So the waitress, is talking about, I can't find a place to live, right? That's affordable. Heard it twice already today, heard it this morning when I'm moving out. It's no different any place else in the whole UP or Northern Michigan. Affordable housing crisis is it. We need to recognize it as a problem. And at a federal level, what do? You work with your local people, your state people, and your federal. You put all your resources together and say, what can we do about this? Yes, I think it needs to be addressed. It needs to be one of the highlighted issues in our district. It's a huge issue. Foreign policy. I'm bored. I've lived overseas for 10 years. As you already know, I did 5 tours. I worked in 25 different countries. Been to about 100 countries. Working here and there. For the State Department. We need a moral foreign policy. We need to stand by some of our principles, what it means to be American, and how do we help the rest of the world. The rest of the world, if the rest of the world doesn't do better, we won't do better either. Plain and simple. COVID will not stop because all Americans are immunized. The next variant could be called the Traverse City variant. Do you know that? Could be called the Marquette variant. But there's 9 billion people in this pandemic. It's a world problem. And we need to work with the world because we're one of them. So we do need a very sound moral foreign policy. And I put it down as securing, to maintain and secure a prosperous world, for the benefit of Americans and the world, right? We are a rich country and I think we should help people. What else am I together with the First District people? All right, expanding public education in pre-3 and 4, 2 years of training, vocational school, junior college, first 2 years of college, trade school. That was in part of the Build Back program. Yep, I before that. A livable wage. I won't sow falsehood or deceive the voters. Won't do that. To get the economy back to normal, we have to address this COVID, pandemic. The best way to do that, folks, is by vaccine. Broadband, quite important for us. What a great place to live and work, right? So if we want people to live up in our community, we got to have a great place for them to work. What do they need? We have workers coming in. They want education for their children. They want good health care. They want a safe place to live, right? For all of those, you need broadband. You need broadband. I would also, I know it's not broadband, but when I'm trying to make phone calls coming from Marquette to here, we need cell service too. Can somebody remind our governor about cell service? Childcare, we talked about that. Young people, the polls are saying young people are saying democracy is failing. We need to re-energize the youth. We need to tell them there is success. We will thrive. Please come back. What did my opponent do? Rhetoric, name calling, little substance. Right? I get tagged as a radical socialist, leftist, and a communist. Don't know what that means. One time I did respond, if you call me a socialist because I believe in Medicare and universal health coverage, I believe in education. I believe that women should be in the work, it's mostly women, sorry, but women should be in the workforce, the child, but stopping a lot of women's childcare. If you call that a socialist, I'm all in. I'm all in.
Shut off your mic. I'm not sure people
Can you-
online can hear you.
Can you hear? Or otherwise I can yell. I want to speak to me. So I have a lot more stuff. The rest of it, I just want for question and answers if we can. I wanted to, I can talk about almost anything you wish. Running for Congress, you almost seem to have to be an expert on everything, which I am definitely not. But, I think the last town hall, I had 3 questions and my total response was, I have no idea. No idea what you're talking about. So throw it at me. I'd be willing to answer it if I can. I hope that part was helpful, but.
Okay, so you said the answer to the.
Oh, here's the mic, here's the.
Yeah, the mic for you. Okay. So I believe you said the answer to the pandemic would be to get everybody vaccinated. But how do you do that? I mean, if they have anti-vaxxers, for medical reasons. I think there's enough vaccine there now for, everybody who wants to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
If they don't want to get vaccinated, how do you do it?
Yeah. If I said everybody, I'm not sure about everybody anymore, because I think right now, and I make.
Enough to deal with it.
Yeah, so let's say that with the pandemic right now, it's mutating. So now I'm kind of putting my doctor hat and public health hat. The virus, fortunately, the last mutation mutated where it's less, deadly, right? So when less deadly, it means, so it's 1/3 less deadly. I got it. But when the cases went up 9-fold, let's see, 9-fold went up 1/3, that means 3-fold. 3-fold goes up the hospitalization. That's why everybody's, in problem. What I mean by, I do believe, I think very shortly, this is my belief, right? And no one wants to predict the COVID because all predictions so far have been off. So my prediction of COVID, right now Michigan is going down. I don't know if you have noticed that Michigan is going down. The UP was, Marquette, Michigan was #1 in the state about 3 times over the last 2 years. We were #1 for the last 3 weeks, being the worst thing. But let me say, our cases in Marquette, I just know Marquette quite well. Our cases in Marquette are 5-fold greater than they have ever been, 5-fold. Our hospitalizations are 1/2. 1/2 of what they went up 5-fold, our hospitalizations are 1/2. That's a factor of 10 off. Why? Vaccine, higher infections, and immunity. That's what's happening. I believe we need to move forward. I do. I think the COVID, we need to move forward. The vaccine is available for everybody that wanted to get it. Who's at risk of the vaccines? The adult. The death rate, anybody take the death rate on a child from COVID, besides the person I already told the answer to? 5 to 12, right? 5 to 17, the death rate of a child 5 to 17 is 1 out of 100,000. I'm a triply vaccinated, called up to date, triply vaccinated, previously infected person. My risk, if I get COVID of dying, is minuscule. It adds about 1 month to my life. It robs 1 month of my life expectancy. It's time to move on, folks. I do. I believe that as a public health medical director. Look at the goals of the state. They switched them around. So the people that didn't want to get vaccinated, as long as you're not taking my bed for my heart attack, my broken, hip, or my car accident, that's your choice now. That's the freedom that we have in the United States. I'm hoping that the vaccinations for the people at risk of serious illnesses goes up, but if it doesn't, we need to move forward. I think we're gonna have to wean Ann Arbor off of masking and social distancing. They'll be doing that until 2030. You know, in the UP, I wish we would have done some more of that.
Dr. Bowden, first thing I'd like to say is I'm glad you're running. We need you there in Congress. Wife and I bring our check. But from all of what you said, I feel like you haven't mentioned at all the one thing that in the present climate in Congress that will make you an effective congressperson is how you deal with those who are not in the same ballpark with you, who don't have the same view, who think you're an anti-patriot, who think everything you say is completely offline. And even when we now have congresspersons who support the insurrection, January 6th, and maybe will be charged, I hope. How in the world, I mean, and I think everything you said has been very positive. I'm glad you're running, but it will be to no end if you don't know how to get others as well as you to somehow,
Okay.
but to talk to people that are completely out of the ball.
My staff doesn't want to hear this, but here we go. My euchre party is with 4 other Republicans. Play euchre, you know, little card game. So I'm the token Democrat. It's been this way for 20 years. 3 of them have donated to the campaign. Why? Because we chat. And again, we just had this conversation with somebody else, a group over here. We started off like, you Democrats are just an enabling. And I can talk about this. I have to. Enabling. A lot of the Republicans think that we're enabling people, right? We enabled them. We gave them this. We gave them that. You know, they don't go to work because they got their money. They got their COVID money that we're enabling. Enabling means government dependency. I'm against enabling people. You know, I'm a Dixonologist too, right? We call it enabling. Like we say, you're enabling your child. That's not being helpful. So we can't enable. We need to support and assist. So if I could get 3 arch Republican, far right Republican people to donate. Now 1, no way. I just don't know. But we're having communications. We're chatting. And how do we bring it back? He said, look how it starts. You are enabling, this. I said, watch it. I am not enabling anything. I'm not Biden. I'm not, this senator. I'm me. How am I enabling? Well, there's people on unemployment that shouldn't be there. Okay, how many people on unemployment should be there? We went around the room. All right, we all agree that the minimum 60% of the people that are on unemployment should be there. Okay, we all agree on that. Got it? Okay, so unemployment is important, isn't it? Now, let's agree, I thought it was like 20%, you thought it was 30%. How do we address the other 40? See, now we're getting down to problem solving. So I think what we have to have is civil virtue again, discussions. When a patient comes in the room with me and yells and swear, I don't yell and swear back. You're going to get absolutely nowhere. So why do politicians do that? Get back to the issue. And I end up saying problem solve. How do you problem solve in the United States? Identify what the problem is. We've lost that. We haven't even talked about the problem. Identify the problem, then look for the facts, debate possible solutions, analyze and move forward. So no, I won't yell at them. I won't scream. I'll participate. I think it would be bad for me to say you're wrong, right? Because as soon as you say you're wrong, they attack you back again. I should say, could you explain why you believe that way? I think it's only with discussion we move forward, and we're missing that. So I think it is possible, a long road. It took me 4 months with my euchre friends to move 3 of them. Pretty proud of that. Pretty proud of that, especially the money that they gave.
It's not a pushback, but I do want to kind of follow up on this question because I think the dynamic you have with your euchre friends is different than trying to deal with the Marjorie Green Taylors and the Matt Gaetz and in the extreme radical right, because they don't want to hear facts, they don't want to hear compromise, they don't want to hear those things. So if that runs out and that doesn't work, what's the plan to push back on that and keep things in checks and balances with the people, like he said, are so out of touch with reality, they don't want to reason with you.
So eventually, in my practice of 25 years, I probably have asked 5 people probably to leave my practice. So the Marjories, try. Got it. I don't need, you don't need to convince anybody, everybody, right? As I say, we have the fringes, we got fringes on both sides. There's fringes everywhere, right? There, no matter where you go on any issue, you're gonna have fringes. Forget the fringes. I'm trying to end up saying, forget the 5%. Okay, I'll give you a mark. I don't think it's 5%, it might be 1%, right? How many people in Congress are so far like her? 3, 4? There's some failings out there, but you know, maybe 3 or 4. Ignore those 3 or 4, work on the other 20 that you can get. If you can get those 20, then they may censor her. Congress, you know, did censor, but it was the Democrats that censored, should have been the Republicans that censored too. So yeah, I will ignore other people too. So if somebody over here was, you know, taking over, I would just say, enough, let's listen to somebody else, right? So there's certain people you probably can't reason with and go someplace else and do
Oh, for
something.
sure, it seems the whole party seems people have been falling in line with that.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not seeing a lot of Republicans that are in that headspace to do that, so to me,
Yeah.
it seems a little bit more than 10% just because everyone's voting.
Yeah.
They're falling in line.
Right, let me say for the first district, 60-40, you know, this part I didn't put in. The district is 60-40, you know, Republican, Democrat. Do I think we could win? Yes, I really do. Why? Because the opponent made some fundamental problems. January 6th is one of them. His voting record is absolutely terrible. So what, you know, there's things that I think he'd be attacked for, and he is in problems. So I'm after, do you think I can convince 1 out of 12 previous voters to switch over to somebody that you could talk to, that you could reason with, that could compromise, that could understand your viewpoints? I think so, because even the Republican Party says 20% of the people are moving away. If we could get those, we win, and I will represent the other really reasonable people for this first district. There. Yeah,
So I appreciate your running, thank you. Could you tell us a little bit about what the structure of your campaign staff is currently? And whether you're getting any support from the DNC?
are you a DN, are you in the state Democratic Party that you got some pull?
No.
All right, here we go. When you end up starting, we will be outspent by the Republicans, right now, we will be outspent by the Republicans, period, forget about it, I know that will end up happening, to a point. But let me go over a couple last cycles. When Bergman won, right, the first time around, he got outspent by the Democrat, and the vote was 60-40. The next election was pretty even, right, pretty even in terms of fundraising, the vote was 60-40. The last election, the fundraising was about, let me do it with my head here, about 10-fold difference was the lowest, and the vote actually went a little bit more in favor, right? So how do you win? Town halls, the candidate, principles, and showing the weaknesses of the incumbent. In terms of staff, in terms of fundraising, we are ahead of schedule in fundraising. It's increasing all the time. Last week was actually a pretty wonderful week for us. So we're ahead of the political, I'm not the finance guy. We're ahead of what they thought where we should be on fundraising, and it's increased. The staff itself, we have 2.5 full-time paid staff. We have a volunteer group that's being coordinated.
I'm not trying to attack it anyway. I'm just, who are the people who are helping you with your campaign?
Kevin is our campaign manager, is back there, right here. He's from Traverse City. Our communications director is from Marquette. Our logistics person is another person kind of from the Marquette area. Those are the workers behind the scenes. Now we have what we call a fellowship program. is for people who are looking for county support. Like I end up saying, we don't have enough, we won't have enough money to have a big staff. So we're developing volunteers, community leaders, and at the end of this, you're gonna, and I'm about to do it right now. I cannot win this election. We can. I cannot win this election. Give me $2 million, I can't do it without the community support. So what kind of help do we need? We need you to talk to disenfranchised Democrats to come back. We need you to talk to independents saying, I think this guy is better than our incumbent. I need you to, if you want, is send out some postcards when we do the postcard writing. I need some of your time, I need some of your dedication. Of course, we will ask for your money. I think at the end, we're talking about, after this week of town hall, we're talking about expanding our paid staff by 1 or 2 positions because the finance is able to support that. But I did want to bring up, the financing is not the overall winner, it's the voters that are. And our message hopefully is going to be clear or clearer. And I think the opponent had made some mistakes. I think we have a good shot. And when I said 1 out of 12, that's a 16-point swing. You figure that one out. 1 out of 12 of his voters. Well, hopefully they will vote for the other person that's on the ballot, me. I think that's real. I really do think that's real. And I don't want to make too much fun about my Euchre group, but if I could get Republicans that are arch enemies to Democrats willing to donate and to vote, I'm doing my work. If each of you could do the same thing. We need desperate help on polling. We'll talk about that. I'll say it right now. Polling means, when you signed up for this thing saying he's a candidate, we need 1,000 signatures. It's hard to get signatures when everybody's masked and everything's virtual, because it has to be a handwritten signature. If anybody wants to volunteer to get some signatures, if you think you can get 10 signatures, please go back to Peggy, my wife. Actually, she's paid staff. But Peggy probably does more work than I do. Peggy has little stuff over here for polling. If you could get 10 signatures, we'll give you some instructions. It's very, very simple. We gave them to some of our friends. We just had a dinner party, some of our friends, and all of a sudden, the next day we have 30 signatures. We need help for that. So no, sir, I think it will work. It can work. It is working. We're energizing some of the volunteers, the fellows. We're doing training. We're reaching out to the colleges and said, if you get credit for this, civil responsibility. Yeah, we're trying hard.
First, I'd like to say, I look forward to putting a Dr. Bob sign in my yard. That'll count. But my question is that when you're elected, are there any particular congressional committees that you got an eye on?
We all have our fantasies. I even did that. Okay, let's get to the Dr. Bob signs. Too early for the Dr. Bob sign, but we actually have already designed them. We got the top, we got the retail store, we paid the credit card. The signs, as you know, probably won't be coming out in probably until spring, early summer. So yep, it's already planned, it's already there, it's on the budget. So well done. I'll get to the committees. We also have shot commercials, radio ads. We had a person come up from Texas, why Texas? We got a good deal, and he heard about our campaign. Isn't that kind of cool? He heard about our campaign in Texas and said, I do it professionally, I'll give you a deal, come on up. We spent what, 3 days, Kevin, 3 days shooting commercials and shooting people like you. Forgot this. If any of you want to participate, blogging, writing, being interviewed, getting on Kevin's iPhone, saying, I support, more than willing to do that. Info at Dr. Bob. Info at votedrbob.com. That goes into our communications team and say, I would be interested. We got 4 of them yesterday. We got a radiologist from, I don't want to say people's names either, but we got a radiologist from Traverse City who said, I'm concerned about the direction of healthcare. Can we chat? Got another one from an educator. We got another person from business. And 2 of them have already been interviewed, shot, and blocked off. That helps. We're at the point of telling your stories. I told you my story a little bit, right? But my story comes from you. Now we want to tell the rest of the first district your story. Okay. Political answer to one thing, what committees? I'd love to be in the healthcare. I'd like to be in education. I'd like to be in foreign policy, you know, the foreign area, and maybe on international aid. Right? Because yes, I was in 2 countries that we spent. Afghanistan at one time, right? Afghanistan, Iraq accounted for 80 to 90% of our worldwide international aid. I have a problem with that, right? Of the worldwide aid. So there are committees I would like to be on, but whatever committee they put me on, I will serve with honor and I will do hard work. But I think education, healthcare, look at the stuff I talked about. Environment would be another cool one, right? Right, you know, I know, but environment, so if they gave me a pick, most of the Congress people get two committees. I'd go educate, if I got to pick, I would say healthcare and education. My third would be foreign, my fourth would be environment. It'd probably give me some government oversight in the library affairs or something. But the oversight committee better watch out. Yeah. Go ahead, question here.
I understand that in Central America, okay, it works. In Central America, El Salvador, Honduras, so much murder and gang, and it's sending 180,000 or more people to our borders every year. Is there a way to do something about that? And also Ukraine. Oh, also, before I realized that there was a get-together here in Traverse City, I bought a meal and interlock, and if anybody wants it, I will give it to you.
Okay, let's switch it a little bit. The border problem, right? The border problem, right? I got interviewed by a conservative radio show. I like it. That's why I want to get interviewed by, the other side. And he asked the same thing about the border. Biden's making the border worse. I said, really? Yeah, show me your facts about that. If you look at the border and how it goes up and down over the years, it's gone up and down based on the economics of both countries, both sides of the border. Sometimes no one ever said anything about it, but we had a negative, influx in the United States. Negative. I mean, there's people coming in, but there were more people leaving than they were coming in. It was based on what economics of both countries. When we were in a kind of our recession, there was more people leaving than coming in. The border has been a problem for how many decades? Out of how many presidents, Republicans and Democrats? It's been a problem, it's still a problem. Do I have a fix for the border? No, I do not. But to say that it's a Republican or Democratic-led issue, they're missing the facts again. It's been a problem for a long time. Afghanistan exit, oh, what a Biden failure is that? We were in Afghanistan for 20 years. I'd like to see the after action plan of the entire thing. Was it the way that everybody wanted to exit? No. When I talk to my Afghan friends, right, I think they're pretty impressed. The Americans weren't, but the Afghans were. That is pretty impressive. In terms of what immigration, I support immigration. I didn't talk about it, but I support immigration. I think immigration is a win-win for everybody. I support immigration based on the following principles, and I need to read because it's actually the reunification of families. I think that should be part of our immigration. Admitting immigrants with skills that are valuable to the U.S. economy. Protecting refugees. There's your Afghanistans, your Iraqis. Some of the other people are refugees, not economic, but they're refugees, and promoting diversity. I believe that successful immigration policy will increase our economic growth. It will address labor market shortages. skilled job shortage. 1/3 of the doctors in the United States are immigrants. Why? Because we don't have enough doctors. Why? That I don't totally understand, right? Why don't we produce more ourselves? So, but we need them, so they're immigrating. So I'm all for immigration. I don't think it will rob Americans of their jobs. It will provide economic viability. Oh, they're robbing our health insurance and our education. Most of the data says, folks, they pay more in than they get out. And I support immigration because most of them go, a lot of them go. A lot of them go. Was it Ukraine or is it Ukraine that I never answered?
Yeah.
Ukraine called a friend today. Is see, I've been in the foreign service. So I called 2 of my colleagues today where they serve party today because they're on evacuation. Right? They're not an ordered departure. We have certain words for them. Ukraine, do I support the international efforts to support Ukraine? Yes, I do. Do I think we should put boots on the ground inside of Ukraine to fight Russia? No, I don't. We've done that several other times with Afghanistan and Iraq, and it hasn't worked out very well. Right? But I do support international effort to support a country against an aggressor. I blogged about this a little while ago. You know, when people says diplomacy is failing, our military leaders in Europe, no, that's when you need diplomacy even more. I remember being with the 4-star general during a diplomatic issue. You know, when presidents go to Korea and stuff like that, probably could have seen me in the news if you walk carefully, because the doctor is always 12 feet away from the president, right? So I'm walking with the White House doctor. Diplomacy is needed more when the military is on standby. The chief of staff of the military says, I don't have enough bullets. Right? Diplomacy is by far the most important thing in Ukraine. I hope Ukraine works. I support the diplomacy. I also support that our military and NATO and other resources are there to keep maybe Russia at bay. And let's hope for the best. I really think so. Now, some of my colleagues, what do you really think of all that's going on? I think he's playing a game. That's Putin. I think Putin's playing a game to win, but not to invade. I hope you're right. Stay safe. We'll chat next week. Those are my friends there. They're diplomats.
All right, we have time for probably one more question. Does anybody else have a question? All right.
I'd be glad to stay afterwards. I do appreciate, for coming out. I hope you had an idea of who Dr. Bob is, what I stand for, answer any questions. I think unlike my opponent, I'm willing to say, here's what I believe in versus, Thank you. Right.
Just checking in on your position on line 5 and about the shutdown of that.
On what?
Line 5.
Quick answer or the long answer?
Well,
Yeah, let me.
The foreseeable future for that.
Yeah, I think, what is line 5 about? Here's a good one that I kind of, I have it all outlined, but what is the problem with line 5, right? Go to the problem first, maybe I should find it. Go to the problem of what line 5 is. Isn't line 5 addressing energy? That's one of the problems. Environment is another problem. International law treaties with Canada and with the First Nations, it's a law issue, right? And it's an economic issue because people talk about jobs and propane and all that stuff. So those are the 4, I think I had 4 issues with line 5. Then you have to address, what are the really important issues underneath there? Here I go. Economics. The most I have read about this, how do I get my information? I read both sides. Enron tell me your side, tell me the other side. Economics, no. Oh, you'll lose jobs, no. No, oil can be refined in other areas. Remember line 5, that means there's line 8 and 9 and 4 and 3, right? So there's other ways for that oil to get to refined. People will not lose their jobs. There will not be an energy shortage. Us in the UP won't freeze our butts off because you got rid of my propane. And guess what I heat on? Propane. No, there's other alternative energy sources for the propane. So it's not about energy. Nope, you're not in. Economics, nope, you're not in. International law, not my decision, it's in courts right now, isn't it? With Canada, treaties are important. The rule of law is important. If you do not follow the rule of law, if you like it or not, we're in trouble. And somebody asked me about like SCOTUS's Supreme Court decision about the abortion or about something. I said, it's the rule of law. And he said, you bypass. No, it's the rule of law. I didn't say I liked it. It's the rule of law. So that is what is stopping it. That's not my decision. I hope that gets resolved. The tribes have reached out for me for their support. They're on part of that. They know who I am. They know where I stand, and they reached out for my support. I came back to them and said, it's the rule of law. I'm not the expert on that. So it leaves one last area, the environment. For me, it's a loser. I think Line 5 should be shut down. What's the problem? 4 issues. What are the facts? Now, I also would say, if my propane goes up to $10 a gallon, then my facts aren't correct, and I don't want my UPers to freeze. No. But the governor has also said, when we looked at this, the propane can come from Sault Ste. Marie. It's the central UP that would suffer. It's not you guys down here, it's the central UP. That's where I live. So it could come in from the east or it could come in from the west. So I looked at all the arguments. The only one that I can find is the environment. Can't support it based on that. I can't. And there's other ways of doing it. And the environment for me is energy now, sustainability. It's time to make the switch. And if that company wants to make a switch, then route it some other way and spend your $5 billion doing something else by showing sustainable, safe energy. So see how I came up with but if any of those facts are incorrect on my part, then I will change my mind. But right now, I think those are the facts, and that's where I stand. Yeah,
All right.
yeah. So thank you very much for coming.
If you have not signed the petition, please remember to do that. We also have envelopes if you want to donate, or you can go to vote.gov.com. Or if you'd like to help us get petition signatures from your community, your